handling?
Okay, about 30 seconds or a minute or so, it's switching over. Okay, you're live.
Well, Oki Nixikoa, Nistu Nidaniko Mokoyo Sakoi. It means Wolf Trail. My English name or my IRS name, because I do pay tax, is Theda Newbreast. And we have again our special guest, is Judith Heilman. We're going to have her speak in a few minutes, but Native Wellness Institute is celebrating 130 shows. Today is 130 shows of bringing wellness. Get your well on. This is Robert Johnson's been saying this for 20 years. Get your well on, and from the Power Hour from Native Wellness Institute. And so today, I guess this week is like week 19. And for some of you, it might be week 20. Since we're just saying during the pandemic or during this transformational diversity of freedom that's happening in our country. And so we welcome you. We'd like, if you could please put in the comments names of people that you want prayers for. If you could please, if you know someone who's COVID positive, or someone who is in a way where they just need extra prayers, put the names in there, because we have some prayer warriors. And regardless, people of color, we embrace our faith. And with our faith, please put those names so that we can all, that collective and that synergy and that energy of praying for each other is what is going to bring freedom for us all. Now, we have this opportunity with Judith, and Judith just is an incredible human being that has been in a lot of the freedom movements throughout the last 6 decades. And so we wanted to start, AOC, we want Alexandra. I mean, just like so much good has happened to create awareness and to bring, just to bring this level of inspiration for women. And so Judith, tell us and do a little introduction, because everyone may not be privy to knowing you as just a sister, this great sister. And so do a little bit of introduction, and can you tell me like from your community, how did you react when AOC just like spoke her mind in a calm force? So what was it like, Judith?
Well, for me, as a veteran Black woman of 67 years, it was just wonderful. It was brilliant. I thought what AOC said was it needs to be preserved for history. Her notes, exactly what she said, how she laid it all out. It was such an indictment of misogyny, of patriarchy, of racism, all together. It was beautifully laid out. It eviscerated, I want to call him Yahoo, but it's Yoho, isn't it, or something like that? His last name.
Yoopy doopy. We don't care.
The white male politician who so insulted her as she was going into the Capitol, an elected representative for people of America in her district. And to do that in public, to do it in front of the press, to call her an effing, I don't know if I can say the word here, bitch, right there, it was just appalling. It was appalling. This stuff has been going on for years, but it was really, really good to have that take place in such a public fashion so that it could be spoken about publicly in the way that she responded to it. It was a beautifully laid out debate. I mean, that needs to be studied in debate circles, in history circles, in communication circles. It needs to be studied by everyone beautifully, how it was done, how rational it was. Very uplifting. I was so happy for our younger generations. And on this day that we bury Congressman John Lewis, may he rest in peace. God bless him and his family. This is an example of what he has set, of the younger generations coming up and doing the hard work. And I'm just so awesomely inspired and moved and touched and lifted up by it, to see these next generations do this. What about you, Theda?
God, Judith, when you said John Lewis, the last time I was with John Lewis was 3 years ago. And we had brought all of the 7 tribal colleges from Montana, from our area, but we'd also brought all of the 38 tribal colleges, and there was the presidents, some of their board of trustees, and the students, and it was just so awesome. And Terrence Laframboy, who is from this reservation, he didn't know who John was, and I go, "Get your butt over here. We're gonna go meet John."
Yeah.
So him and I went up. We went up, and then I know how John is. They need those snippets, and I said, "John, I want you to meet our next leader for this next 75 years." And I said, he comes from a college where 25% of our students live on $5,000 a year, and with their entire family. But I want you to meet this young man. And I just saw John take those pieces of information, and then he just looked into Terrence's eyes, and he talked with him. And I seen, that calculative John Lewis, where he knew who he was speaking to. And I would have recorded it, but when he spoke to the students, you could see them sit up. You could see that they were rising with their education, that their goal was they had a responsibility for learning, not only America's education, but their cultural education. But in this responsibility, they were supposed to go back and help the people. And so John Lewis, I swear to God, it's like he was like magic. He was like magic, because when he got up and he spoke, all of our students said, "Dang, is that guy like Martin Luther King?" And we said, "Damn right." He's like Martin Luther King. And they were I don't know, they were in awe, and they were just they just had this ultimate respect, and they had a new mentor.
Yes.
Leader, so to John Lewis, he did his work on earth. He did a dang good job. And John Lewis, we know you're across the veil, but John Lewis, we have, just like AOC. AOC was born in 1989. AOC.
That was like yesterday.
Yeah. But Judith, see that generation, 30 and under? Those are our warriors.
Yeah.
Our role as leaders is to create more leaders. And I just watched it, and I watched my 82-year-old mother just sit up in her chair and lean forward, and she wanted to watch it twice, and then she watched it 3 times, and I just watched her eyes light up. And so just a short story, and then Judith, I want you to speak about the things that you wanted to give to our audience out of Native Wellness Institute world. AOC, when she spoke, I started going back through times when I felt liberated. And so the story I want to share, and it's for purposes of, because we were all 12 years old. And when you're 12 years old, we had some, at that time we called them Chicana. We had Chicano friends.
Right.
We had our Black friends, and then we had our Asian Pacific Islander friends, and
all the hyphenates.
Right. And so anyway, we had our own little meeting. We're 12 years old. And it was kind of like, well, how are we going to be liberated? So this is what we did. At that time, Planned Parenthood would see anybody. And now remember, we're all virgins.
Mm-hmm.
We're diverse, but we're all virgins.
Mm-hmm.
And to be liberated, you were supposed to have a counselor and Planned Parenthood, so we held hands. And we kind of like marched down to Planned Parenthood. We're all virgins, and we signed up for a pap and pelvic.
Uh-huh.
And we signed up because we were told that a woman has the right and the control over her own body.
Yeah.
So we're 12 years old. So we did pap and pelvic. We got breast examinations. And then they talked to us about getting on birth control. So each individually, and of course, because of confidentiality, we each went in with counselors. And so I can only speak for myself. I chose to go on birth control so that if a pregnancy did happen, or that I would have choice. It was my choice and not man's choice, not my parents' choice, not the media's choice, and not, it was actually—
It's not the government's choice.
It's not the government. The government doesn't own my vagina. The government doesn't own my uterus. The government doesn't own my breasts. I own it. But here I was 12 years old and I did that, and then it gave choice. And so the purpose of the story is every girl that we held hands with, we didn't have teenage pregnancy. They all went to college. They're all independent grandmas right now.
Mm.
They had choice about when they themselves were going to have that sacredness of giving life to a brand new human being.
Yeah.
And and so then that was so Judith, what do you because like AOC, and for those of you who are younger, Judith and I have lived through a couple movements. What are some of in your community? What have some of the freedoms or some of the lessons or stories that you have of how you got that? Tell us about that, Judith.
Of how I got my freedoms?
Yes.
Hard
How
won.
women free. Yes.
Hard won. Jeez. We had the dress codes in high school, which were outrageous then. They're, and now people are, like free the nipple and everything. Like, there's still so many restrictions on what one can wear while they're in high school, in junior high, and probably middle school and lower as well. I don't know. But I remember there was a time that I went to a union meeting, I think it was, when I was studying law enforcement, because for those of you who are new here, I became a cop straight out of university. But when I was still studying, and I went to a police union meeting, and it was in the summer, and it was very warm, and I wore a t-shirt and cutoffs. And there were some of the guys. I was the only woman in there, the only female in there. And a couple of the guys were also wearing cutoffs. And one of them came up to me after the meeting and said how embarrassed he was that I wore cutoffs, jean cutoffs to this meeting. And I'm looking around at the other guys who are wearing jean cutoffs and go, why? I mean, it's just all that kind of crap, just having to go through that. And then also when I did become a cop, and I was in my first week of training, I think it was must have been my first day. And coming back in on a break from patrol, and my training officer opened the door for me to go in. And I said, no, we can't be having this. I need to just set this standard right away. Whoever gets to the door first is the one who opens it for the other. do not feel like as a man, you need to open the door for me as a woman. That's putting me on a lesser plane, on a lower plane than you guys, and we're both carrying guns on our hips. So, nah, no, we're not going to do that. So it's just all that kind of stuff where you really have to throw your stake in the ground and say, this is what I'm doing. And this is, I am in control. And I am not going to fall to this patriarchal system that we have, where they're putting women up on a pedestal and only letting them down under certain circumstances. And heaven forbid, if you've got black or brown skin, that makes that even worse, that pedestal being with spikes around it or something. I don't know, it's like wanting to narrow even more what this racist white society wants to let us do.
Yes.
Will accept from us.
Yes. And Judith, I love your stories, because even in that description of not allowing ourselves to be second-class citizens in any shape or form. And so I was thinking just in recently, if we look at the wave of awareness like that Weinstein, the Me Too campaign has brought. If we look at Alois Cabal for the Native people, and I think even when I grew up, one of my first heroes was Harriet Tubman. I mean, Harriet Tubman was like my hero. Harriet Tubman,
way up there.
Harriet Tubman, and then even just the recent movie, but having read all the books, Harriet Tubman reminded me of the stories my mother told when she ran away from boarding school in the middle of winter, and just those kind of liberating times where women can self-actualize and be their real world self. So Judith, why don't we because this is what Judith and I do, the way that I learn more from her as a Black woman with this experience is we have these dialogues, and so we're just gonna share some stories. Because so what did you think about like when Colin Kaepernick took the knee?
I was so proud.
Tell us about that.
So proud. I was so proud because football is such a masculine thing. I mean, this whole thing, how boys get into football from Pop Warner, in elementary school, and it's just such a He-Man kind of thing, and almost like their coaches are their gods, and their team is their family and all that kind of stuff. So for him to first sit and then decide to kneel after speaking with a person from the military, talking about kneeling being the honoring thing in the military, I just thought was just so brave. He had to have known how controversial that was going to be. He just started doing it on his own. He did not make a big deal out of it. He had done it for several times before the press picked up on it. And and then of course white America went nuts. So the majority of white America, and plenty of people of color too, because they did not understand how deadly serious the situation was. I think more people understand it now, and literally the horrible murder of George Floyd by that cop having his knee on his neck. And you put that picture, yes, rest in peace, George Floyd. You put that picture of that police officer with his knee on his neck, diabolically, calmly killing George Floyd, and then juxtapose that with a picture of Colin Kaepernick with calmly kneeling on a football field. seriously. And he was kneeling for justice, for the rights, for that Black Lives Matter. So, you know, if people had heeded that call that Colin Kaepernick did for the very beginning, ended up getting shut out of football for, and all the other people who have been kneeling since then, if that had been heeded, would George Floyd have been so horrifically murdered? I don't know.
Yeah, you know, I think you know, because in hindsight, and it is a good time to look at historical in hindsight, you know, Jolene, if you could put that first picture up, I was thinking, you know, when we were celebrating, meeting all the tribes, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the occupation of Alcatraz, and I was with my mom, and there was hundreds of, I don't know, 4,000 people went out there on the picture that you're looking at right now. It's an example of how there's a respect between Black Lives Matter and Brown Lives Matter and Red Lives Matter. But you know, when he came out, and this is like 3 a.m. in the morning, 3 a.m. in the morning, and you know, some people got coffee, you know, they're so anyway, he got to get on the boat that we were on because they had to, you know, we had to go out to Alcatraz. And so we're boarding, and some of our Indian men, and this is like, you know, gender, some of our Indian men just said to all of us, all of the people, just like, yeah, there's Colin, you know, please just give him respect.
Right.
And so it was just, so it was like, not, he wasn't this celebrity, he was just one of us. And I just seen him, you know, walking freely around the boat. I seen him admiring, you know, we started to, the sun was coming up, and then they kind of gave him the leeway of when he wanted to speak and how much he wanted to speak. And this photo that you see right here, he not only the things that we have in common, you know, our faith, his faith, but he mentioned his part of his faith was his grandma. Oh, and then I thought, if it's a tribal person, your grandma has the power. Grandpa does too. You know, we love all our grandpas, but grandma has some power, you know, that is there. But when he got up and spoke, it was that kind that, you know, the hair on your body rises, but it was about equality. It was about political freedom, and it was about economic freedom. And he spoke about, you know, when he did take the knee, he literally, you know, cut that money chain off, because, you know, he cut it off, but that didn't mean as much with what he was standing for.
That's right.
And he was calling us all out, that we had to, all people of color, all diversity, all that have similar wounds and experiences from the government or from the way the patriarchy, or that the way that it's been, he was calling us all out to help each other and be with each other. And he said, that's why I came all the way out. He came, and it's not the first time, and he just said, I'm going to come out to Alcatraz with you as often as I can every year to celebrate this 50th year he wasn't going to miss. So
Theda, I'm a little concerned.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We're sharing this live on the Montana Racial Equity Project Facebook page as well, and also our book club page. And
Excellent.
I'm concerned that there are some people who may not know what you're talking about Alcatraz, and why this is. I know. Well, see.
Okay. So in a 1 minute nutshell, in 1969, and again, it was the beginning of civil rights. It was during the civil rights movement. There was a group of, they were all friends of our family that went out November 20th, 1969, and symbolically took back the occupation of Alcatraz Island as a federal place, and they reclaimed the land symbolically. And it was around 11 pieces of legislation that the Indian Religious Freedom, the Indian Child Welfare Act, all of these freedom, we didn't have those freedoms. Before that, and then it took till 1978. So this occupation, they were out there for 19 months, and boy, they brutalized them, but they stayed. And what they were able to do, just like Standing Rock, just like AOC, just like all of these benchmarks, they had all of these benchmarks, and then we got all of our civil rights. Because so in the political arena, we became even. It was even, and I'll just mention the Indian Religious Freedom Act came out of the occupation of Alcatraz, because when it passed in 1978, prior to that, if we had a Sundance or a sweat lodge, or we used eagle feathers, we were put in prison because it was illegal. It was illegal for tribes. Can you imagine that? I mean, it makes me want to, it hurts me at some kind of level, but I'm not going to react to this hurt and anger. I'm going to react with prayer and calculative planning, like what we're doing right now, Judith, how we can plan to ally to bring equity back. And so Alcatraz, so this 50th anniversary, and there was 11 people that they were the ones who took it over, that were there, like Lenata Warjack. And Lenata, I hope you're watching, Lenata. You know, they got up and spoke, and we got to hear, and it was so beautiful because everybody listened. You could hear a pin drop. They, and you know, there were half women, half men, and they listened to their story, and it was so healing, and it was so liberating to hear what they went through and what they think now. And that's why I think for you and Judith and Native Wellness Institute, we got to look at the history and think about who those who witnessed it, what they think of that history right now. So Judith, what do you want to tell our audience? Because part of what we want, you know, I said, you know, people say Black Lives Matter, and then I just ask them, who's your Black friends? I mean, you know, and then they say, I don't have any. And I go, do you think Black Lives Matter? Okay, so we're going to correct that. We're correct that. And you know, so
someone who works down the hall in your office, who you're occasionally in the break room with having a cup of coffee, you know, is that your Black friend? No, I don't think so.
So and that's why we have Judith. Judith's our ally. At Native Wellness Institute, we're seeing that we have to have our allies, and we have to listen to our allies. So Judith, Judith and I, you know, we worked on the Obama campaign in 2012 together, and we've worked on several Democratic things since there. So what would you like to share? Because, you know, we have a lot of tribal people. We have a lot of international people listening. What would you like to share with them, Judith?
Well, you know, something that when you were talking about Harriet Tubman, you know, just the generational things, that there's similarities that go on. I mean, in the first one that we did together for this Native Wellness Institute Power Hour, which I love that name, Power Hour, I talked about my great-grandfather, my great-grandfather having, after emancipation, walked from Louisiana, from the plantation in Louisiana to Southern Ohio to work for years to work on getting his bachelor's, and then he went on in menial labor, and then went on to getting a master's and then a PhD in theology. But what, I don't know if I told you, but his mom, my great-great-grandmother, her name was Harriet.
Her name was
So
Harriet.
you were talking about Harriet Tubman, and my great-great-grandmother's name was Harriet, and my own mother's name was Harriet. And so Harriet Tubman is just a wonderful, wonderful ally of mine too. But then to have that name passed down, that name Harriet passed down through our generations is really, really cool as well.
Yeah. Would just for our audience now, would you refresh us on some of that history of the grandpa, or just some of the history? Yeah, because I think that's important.
Okay. Um, the farthest my family can trace back my heritage on my mother's side, on the maternal side, is to our great great grandmother, whose name was Harriet.
Okay.
Into slavery on the Shaw plantation down in, well, I don't know if she was originally born on that plantation or not, but she gave birth to several children while she was on that plantation. She actually married which in Louisiana, miscegenation and marriages between Black and white people were actually considered okay and legal, which was very unusual. Louisiana was the only state that had that. And it wasn't in everywhere in Louisiana, but so she actually ended up marrying the plantation owner whose name was P.J. Shaw.
Excellent.
Three children together, one of whom was named Daniel. And after emancipation, so Daniel was half Black and half white. He walked to Southern Ohio to get a full and complete college education because it was not accessible to him in Louisiana nor in any states in between. So I don't know how he crossed rivers and all that, because there certainly wasn't any public transportation that was available to Black folk, and how to get across rivers. So it had to be very well thought out. And I don't know how long the time took for him to make that journey. So that's just a pretty special thing for our family on the maternal side. And if you see the film 12 Years a Slave, Alfre Woodard, the great, great actress, Alfre Woodard plays Mistress Shaw, my great, great grandmother in that film. The dialogue is all made up, and she's not seen as a very nice woman actually in there. Yeah. I would hope that she was nicer in real life, but there she was.
Well, thank you. No, Judith, I think that story, and thank you for that story, because that helps us understand your passion now, and that helps us understand who influenced you, even, at a DNA level. But, I was, and this is kind of like this morning, I was reflecting, because I'm always into stories, and I was trying to think of analogies, like because when I moved off the reservation, I was 7.5, and I was only around my Blackfeet people, but then I moved to Oakland, California. And then I was thinking about how I folded into Oakland life. I mean, everybody in my classroom was African American, just except for a couple of Latinas. And I remember things like block parties.
Block parties.
I remember, like where everybody would just like turn up, and there'd be Motown. And
yeah.
So this morning I was thinking that was like what I experienced in our powwows, just with the people and food and celebration, and there was this energy. So that, like, at one point, block parties were like my powwows, and so I just fit right in. Have you? So I just fit right in, and of course I had to learn how to dance, and luckily, genetically we're chicken dancers, or we're fancy shawl dancers, so we got rhythm. So we didn't, like they say, when you don't have, you look at somebody, they don't got no rhythm. But Judith, is there any like these cross analogies, that come to your mind? I mean, like, it's like I got your back and you got my back. How did that happen? What do you think about that? How did that happen?
I think it was just so automatic because there we were when we first met, you and I and Lori, your sister, and your mom, Betty Cooper, love them all. When we first met, it was at the state Democratic convention before to decide who were going to be the delegates to the Democratic National Convention, and we were the only dark colored people in the room.
I remember. I,
There were some others from Blackfeet or different tribes, I think. But I don't know, somehow the three of us just really connected, and I was just like, I'm so happy to be sitting with you guys in the sea of whiteness. And most of whom I didn't know, even though I had a very powerful role there. So, because I was the state director and I was the one who, okayed the people who were voted to go ahead on to the national convention. So it had to go through me, and which was a little nerve wracking with all these people who didn't know me. And there I was, a Black woman, and like, okay, well, I guess they have to understand that I got the power.
oh, thank you for that story. Because so let's just talk about Black voting and Indian voting, just for a moment.
Yeah, sure.
Because I mean, John Lewis himself, all of his quotes around, that's when you have you exercise your true rights, your human rights when you vote. So just for us, we couldn't vote until like 1924.
Yeah.
And prior to that, we were wards of the government. We were actually, under wards in the war department. So that was our citizenship. And then, and so it as you can see, it's taken some time. And like right now in Montana, man, we've got like Cinda Bird, we've got like Marcy McLean, we've got like these powerhouse leaders that man, they even they're planning for everyone to vote. I think we're gonna be voting. So what is that like in the Black community? When did Blacks start voting, and when did they realize that their vote counted, and what was some of that movement?
You froze on me.
Oh, sorry. Am I freezing?
So you froze on me.
I'm sorry.
Theda. You said when did Black people or something? So
sorry. Sorry for the freeze. We're in rural Montana. It was around. Just give us some insight. Why are all Black people voting this time in November? And we only got less than 100 days before we have a new president. Oh, please just speak about that. Just in terms of the right to vote.
The right to vote was gained through the shed of gallons and gallons and gallons, hundreds and hundreds of gallons of Black blood. Well, obviously our blood is red too, but of Black people's blood, through beatings, through lynchings, through all sorts of things. The film Selma is really good to see that, and I think John Lewis is portrayed in that as well, even though Martin Luther King is the main character. That Ava DuVernay directed that film, which is just brilliant. But we went through so many hardships, and I'm not sure that some of the younger generations understand that, damn it, we better be voting because so many of our ancestors died to vote, were brutally wounded and horribly wounded to vote, lost their lives. But there are also so many people who have been so deeply affected by our racist society that they feel, what's the use of voting? And It's our responsibility as elders to convince them that if you don't vote, you are giving up. You aren't even giving us a chance.
Mhm.
You have to vote. Everybody has to vote. To not vote is letting our oppressors continue to oppress big
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
And so many people staying away from the polls last time allowed this current administration to get in that has rolled back and rolled back and rolled back our voting rights, our rights to our bodily autonomy, our rights to justice and equity, so many things. Our current president has just said today, I think he mused in a tweet, one of his tweets this morning, or was it yesterday, about rolling back a something from the Obama-Biden administration, as he termed it, that had to do with keeping low income people out of white suburbs,
Ah,
which is redlining. I mean,
yes.
it's a proposition of ghettos again. I mean, it's a proposition of separation. And when we have schools that the way our country does things is public schools are funded from property taxes, this just creates even worse situation as far as so-called good schools and so-called bad schools, and good neighborhoods and bad neighborhoods. It's more separation rather than bringing us together and making things more equitable and just for everybody, not
For
just
everybody.
brown and black people and indigenous people.
Yes. And so thank you for some of that history, and then just encouraging that your arena of loves and nations and people and ours, we're all going to vote.
Damn straight.
We're just all
You can say
vote.
damn Skippy.
But I have another little story, and it's about a woman named Sharon Day, and she's comes from she does a lot of the water walk, because water is like one of our
Little pot.
yeah, from Standing Rock to way back, water is like the medicine. And Sharon, as well as a lot of our Native women, they sing songs, they do prayers, but this is what she's going to do, and she's organizing it right now. And we'll share the information with you. She's going to walk to Washington D.C. with a tree of peace, and it's a cedar, and they're making it right now. And what they're going to do is they're going to have maple leaves or tobacco ties, and each of those tobacco ties or maple leaves are going to have a wish, and it's a hopeful wish. It's going to be like a wish for some type of love, some type of compassion, some type of forgiveness. And then they're gonna arrive there around October 1st and 2nd. But their purpose, their purpose for arriving there is to encourage everyone to vote. And so that the that I'm just bringing that up because on a grandma's network where it's several. It's Mary Lyons, Linda Woods, Cheryl Whitehawk. We're just trying to figure out how grandmas, because not everyone has a grandma, and not everyone has a mother, and so we're trying to look at how we can not spread ourselves thin, but to do things. And so, what do you think about stories like that? And what are some of the efforts, like with your organization? What are the things that we could that we could all support and help with?
Well, getting people to the polls.
Okay.
Volunteering to poll watch. The 2018 election, our office took the whole day off.
Okay.
And
Now you're freezing.
um, ask questions, help direct people to where they needed to go,
Mm-hmm.
help them know their rights. And so that's what we did. If somebody needed a ride, we would give them rides.
Excellent.
So although at that time it was just me, actually going to think of it, because we had an AmeriCorps Vista then who was forbidden to do that kind of a thing because they were technically a government employee. But this year we'll be doing that. We'll definitely be doing that. We'll have election day off. I think everybody ought to have election day off, especially if they have to do in-person voting, which
Yes.
is really kind of scary in this day and time with the novel coronavirus. So vote by mail, everybody. Vote by mail. And if
Mhm.
you can't show up early, vote early in person, vote early on the day of, have your mask, keep your social distancing, don't touch anybody else, all that kind of stuff. Get the dang vote in. Vote. Your life depends on it.
Oh, no, thank you, Judith. And I again with I was just thinking I was thinking about the United Nations. Like
Okay.
so like the United Nations and I always wanted the little it's the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And it's just a little booklet, and it's always in my work bag, and I got an extra copy on my desk. And I was just thinking about, everyone is like, what's the plan? What's the plan? Or they're like, where should we move? AOC is now stimulated us on women's rights. We look at human rights. We look at political freedoms. We're talking about, voting freedoms. We're talking about social freedoms. But Judith, how does this human rights fit with Black Lives Matter, with the racial equity, with
Well,
how does that come together? Talk to us about that.
it fits perfectly because it's nonpartisan.
Okay.
And for an organization like ours in particular, which is a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit,
Yes.
it's so easy to point to that and say, look, it's all here. It's all here. It's not a question of Republican, Libertarian, Democrat, Socialist, Green Party, whatever. It's all there. and it's just the perfect resource for an organization like ours to talk about civil and human rights.
Okay. And one of the other the things maybe as I don't have to plan, so we got a good 10 minutes to go, is I want to talk a little bit about some psychological freedoms, and where we're not internalized oppressed, where we don't believe the stereotypes, where that we actually believe we are smart. We believe we are beautiful. We believe that we're worthy. We believe that we're badasses. Where we give ourselves permission to design our lives. And so Judith, could you speak a little bit about those psychological freedoms?
Yes, please.
I love you.
Here's one thing that people really, really need to understand is that our media, the vast majority of our media in this nation is white led and is designed and written by white people. They cannot help but have a white lens, which in effect has blinders on it about the viewpoints and the cultures and how Black, Brown, and Indigenous people think. So when I was in college, it was during the Symbionese Liberation Army and just amongst all sorts of other things. And Patty Hearst had gotten kidnapped from Berkeley and then supposedly converted to become a member of the SLA, the Symbionese Liberation Army. And her picture was on the cover of Newsweek and Time as when she was holding a rifle or a shotgun or something like that while robbing a bank.
Yes.
So I bought both issues and I read both articles, and I was so amazed at the different slants, at what you would get from reading the Time magazine, as opposed to reading what Newsweek is. And it is the same thing if you read an article about a subject that Indian Country Today or Native News Online writes, or that Essence Magazine or Ebony Magazine or The Root or News One, or all these different Black publications that report on the news, read and write. So if you read something about a topic, say the Dakota Access Pipeline in the New York Times, and then you read about it in Indian Country Today, you're going to get a whole new insight. And so people really, really need to understand that what they're reading, if they're reading an article from the Washington Post or the LA Times or the Chicago Tribune or the Bozeman Daily Chronicle or the Flathead Beacon, that information is going to be delivered with basically a very, very subtle white point of view than if they're reading it or hearing it from a Black publisher or broadcaster. Do you agree?
Yes, Judith, and thank you, because one of the psychological freedoms, like with Native Wellness Institute, that's the reason we have the Power Hour. And, and I think it was our good brother, Robert Johnson. I just love Robert. He's always, he get your well on Power Hour, and we're always brainstorming. But the psychological freedom that you're speaking about is, I think we have to teach our young people how what they view. It's just like, okay, I try not to watch any mainstream media like CNN. I do like a spectrum of, I look at the news in New Zealand. I look at BBC. I look at NPR. I look at RT News. And then what I do is my friends, and I say, have a diversity of friends, because one of just like a healing thing, people say, oh, I don't want to get on Facebook, all that much drama. And I say, well, who are your friends? Change some friends. But look at getting international friends. So like, if I want to know anything, like what's the latest in New Zealand, I look at Tapura's page, or I look at a Canadian page, or I look at my friends down in Mexico, or my friends that are staying down there, so that I can get there's freedom. That's truly freedom of press and freedom of awareness when you can get the truth. And so thank you for that. In our remaining time, I just want to share a little story about psychological freedom for women, and then maybe you could share your story that you want to, Judith. I've been working with women, and I don't want to say liberating themselves, but women finding their true authentic self for about 4 decades. And it touches my heart so deeply when a woman finds herself. And I was so I think I'm gonna pull out a story. You know, there's this beautiful young woman named Amber Webb. She lives up in Alaska, and she has started. They have a kuspuk. That's their type of dress that they wear and they make. And she has this giant kuspuk that's, I don't know, like 25 feet by 20. And she started just with the Sharpie pen. She started taking the photos of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and she drew them on the kuspuk. And and that just symbolic. It's almost like what Sharon Day is doing, what a lot of our women are doing. But as she brings it out and people just get to touch it, and it's the beginning of healing stories of how these women and their families. And when you look at the photos, it's such nicely done. It's like a photograph. And so shout out to Amber and all of the artists that are that bead the that have the No More Stolen Sisters. This comes, I carry this around. A grandma out in San Francisco gave me this, but I carry these and I tell that story because I can see, and Amber falls in that AOC. All AOCs that are 30 years old, a few years older, they're like these women that are finding their true authentic self, and it's through art and it's through all kinds of different arenas. But I believe we're at a tipping point. And in November, in the things, there's benchmarks that happens, and COVID is just a gift to make us sit still and to know ourselves better and to treat people better. And we're getting humbled. We're getting really, really humbled with COVID. And so, Judith, so I'll end with that, and I'll just say, please keep coming along this journey with us with Native Wellness Institute, because our whole team, we believe in healing people, heal people. And we believe we make a difference. We believe in you that are watching this. And so we're going to keep doing it. So Judith, what would you like to say? And we could just go forever. Like we'll say, okay, Jillian, we're going to go for that. No.
I know we could, but I have to get off really soon. I have to go right into another Zoom meeting, but I'll call you after that's done. But I just want to say that I think the Black community, much of the Black community, or most of it, is probably patient like the Native community with this COVID thing. Yes, we don't like it. Yes, it's scary. But I think that overall we have more patience with it. And I frankly think it has to do with the crap we've had to live with for generations upon generations in this land since the first white person set foot on this land, the first colonizers. So we've had to endure such long, brutal things through which many of us were not able to survive, our ancestors, that I think that we're just more used to just having to be patient and ride it out and be safe and be wise and just get it done. Just be safe and protect our elders, especially, and our young ones, in staying safe and just passing on the wisdom and just trying to be good ancestors. We want to leave this earth to cross the veil, as you said about John Lewis, as good ancestors that who the younger people can look on and say they modeled really well for us.
Oh, thank you, Judith. And we're going to continue to have you on because we don't want to phase out, because the way that you build relationships is you listen to each other's stories, and that's
True.
ultimately Native Wellness Institute, a lot of our healing is just, we're the ears to hear the story. And when people break the silence and are able to heal with all of those hard things. And so thank you, Judith. Go on about your day, and we'll be in touch, and would like to, on behalf of Native Wellness Institute, we thank you for joining us on the Power Hour. We've got others coming up this week that are powerhouses. We part of like Jean Tagabon, Robert Johnson, Lavina Louie. I could go on. Casey Nicholson, Jalene Joseph, Shailene, and the Indigenous 20-something. Those guys are a powerhouse and getting the vote out in about our new world. So we want to bid you farewell. We want you to have a good afternoon. We want you to remember just to reach out and connect, and do it virtually. It's okay. We mask to mask. I mean, whatever you need to do, but reach out, and that we're here. And in less than 100 days, we're gonna have a new president. So with that, we thank you so much. We thank you, Judith, and we're gonna say "Kita kito matsano," which means see you later. We never say goodbye. So thank you very much, Judith.
See you later, Theda. I love being asked on. Thank you. This is just great healing time for me to be in conversation with you.
Excellent. Goodbye, everyone.